Welcome and good day to everyone. Welcome to this edition of our Friday Fundamentals. My name is Steve, and thank you for joining me today. Today I'm going to be covering off the basic principles and concepts of drawing a house with SoftPlan. Regardless of your current experience with the program, whether you're new to the program or have been working with SoftPlan for some time now, I will be going through several tips and tricks along the way. And most of you may or may not be aware of, so there should be something here for everyone to learn. As always, this session will be recorded and posted on our social media pages, so you can always review it at a later time. To get started for today, when you first start SoftPlan, coming from our start page, if you want to create a new project, and a project is how SoftPlan organizes a house design, you would click here to start a new project, and I've already done that for us. I've created a new project, filled in the pertinent information. Namely, here I want to point out that the client information I put in there as a sample, that's important to put it in for when we get to what we call a plan set. We assemble the drawings for creating a construction set of documents. That information will be repeated on your plan sets. The name of the drawing by default is going to be main floor, so when starting your house design by default, we typically assume you're going to start with the main floor plan, though you can rename that if you needed to. And I'm also going to automatically open a 3D and soft list tab. Those are selected here. So I'll hit OK. A new project then is created. You'll see 3 tabs are now being generated: the main floor, a 3D tab, and a soft list report. In this case, our standard complete. If you want to modify that information, that client information, or review it, File Project option will repeat that information here so you can modify it or add to it as necessary. A brief tour of the screens and the layouts of the menus. Across the top, we have our menu bar. Draw, erase, move, etc. Those are where you go to access all the commands. When you have a menu bar selected, for example, move, the bar beneath it labeled as the ribbon menu will update to show you the commands for the active menu item selected. Below that, we have a toolbar. It's a quick shortcut to gain access to any of the commands. Moving along, we have what we call the status bar. The status bar updates information relative to whatever command is currently selected. Included in that status bar is a tape measure and angle counter, so you can rely on that to measure estimated lengths and angles. 2 buttons here labeled default building option and default layer. The program does have the ability to control visibilities. We can control 2D visibilities alone using layers, defining objects to certain layers and making those layers visible or not to control what you see from a 2D perspective. The same holds true for building options. The building options take it a step further. If you put something on an invisible building option, it hides it from all aspects of the design: the plan view, elevation sections, 3Ds, and the material report. Finally, at the end, we have something called the mode selector. And we will be referring to that several times today. This is where we go to access other aspects of the floor plan. So when we're on the main floor plan, we need to control or dictate the floor system, for example, or the ceiling system, or the roof. And there are a number of modes that we will go through today to add those other details to the floor plan. I want to start off with, by first and foremost, describing that these menu layouts can be organized. So if you find yourself, depending on your screen resolution, that the real estate, if you will, from amount of space you have there, if you poise your cursor over top of the leading dots or at the beginning of any menu bar, and when you get this cursor with arrows pointing in all directions, if you hold down your left mouse button and move, you can drag that menu bar to either a floating menu bar, or as I'm going to do here, put into a second row all by itself. This leaves you with more real estate, if you will, for your toolbar. And if you want to include or add extra items to the toolbar, which is useful information, add, remove, customize. Here I'm going to come down and add from the move menu an align to edge. I've already got one in there. So that's an easy way to customize your toolbar. So you want to put items in there that you're going to use more frequently. And it's a matter of just dragging and dropping them into it. We also have something called a floating toolbar. I'll access that as well. But you can drag and drop items to and from it as well to customize the icons within there. SoftPlan is a object-oriented program. So we're going to start drawing a series of objects. These objects are predefined, so walls, windows, doors, cabinets. We have an extensive list of objects are already defined for you. The program also allows you to customize these objects if you needed to, but we're going to start using some stock walls. Again, these can be modified to suit whatever necessities you may have. So to start off with, we go to Draw, Wall. I'm going to start by drawing a 2x6 sided wall. I'll hit OK. The other concept within SoftPlan is that of a sketch edit. So rather than strive for accuracy, we're going to sketch in the design and we'll gain accuracy afterwards by modifying the associative dimensions that are on the floor plan. I'm going to start by first relying on the tape measure in my status bar. That will reset to 0 as soon as I start drawing the wall. So just draw the wall. All input is done with the left mouse button. The right mouse button then becomes a cancel. So for example, if I left click here and decide that that was not a good start point, I can right click to cancel and allow me to start my wall at a new location. So I'll left click, relying on the tape measure to go to about 40 feet, and then I'll click again. The first wall we draw, if it's an exterior wall type, would require 3 clicks. The first click is the start point, the second click is the end point, and the third click would be the direction of the wall, the surface side. If I zoom in here, you can see that the current siding is pointing up. If I move my cursor down, the siding points down. I want my siding to be above. This will be the back of the house, so I'll move my cursor up and click. That then draws the wall. All subsequent walls will assume the same surface side based off of the first wall drawn. You'll also start noticing that there are some temporary dimensions that are going to be applied to the lengths of the walls. Those will draw in solid once my walls are set. In this case, I'm going to now rely on those temporary dimensions to give me the length of wall I need. So I want about 25 feet here. I'll come over to about 20 feet, down about 6 feet, and when I end where I started, the program automatically closes or joins the walls together. I'll come to my 3D tab. We can start to see the walls or the shape of the house coming through in a 3D point of view. And if I come to my standard report, it's also starting to list quantities of materials. So both the 3D and the material list, they're all deriving their information, obviously, from the floor plans. And more importantly, the floor plans, if I come to my navigation here on the left side, the drawings that are assembled under the model category of the navigation. So as we add and remove things from the floor plan or modify the floor plan, both the 3D and the report are going to update accordingly. I'm going to close the report. If I don't need that information, a right click on any tab will indeed close it. And it's a good idea to manage the number of active tabs you have in a project. Having many tabs open does slow down the performance, especially if you have many 3D tabs or many Softlist report tabs. So if you're not going to use those information or use that information, you can close those tabs easy enough by right-clicking on any tab. And you can always open those at a later time if you needed to. back to my main floor. So now I can simply switch between these tabs. And I'm now wanting to firm up my dimensions. Before I do that, I've been kind of zooming in and out. So let me briefly describe how we can zoom and pan within a floor plan view. Using the wheel button, if I roll away from me, that's a zoom in. And if I roll towards me, that's a zoom out. And if I hold down the middle wheel button, I can pan up, down, left, right. So that's how you maneuver around a floor plan. The next thing we want to do, though, is firm up these dimensions. So I want, for example, across the top, that needs to be 40 feet even. We do that by editing the dimensions. So SoftPlan's Edit tool allows you to edit any object drawn and modify the properties of that object. In this case, if we apply it to a dimension, so first of all, we go to the Edit menu, click on Edit Item. Notice again that the status bar does update to show you the current command you have selected. So I got Edit Item. I left click on the dimension digit, and we are allowed to modify what that dimension is. Its current dimension is 40 feet, 1.5, but I want that to be 40 feet even. To enter unit of measurement, so feet and inches, the minus sign represents feet, the plus sign represents inches. So if I needed 40 feet, 6 inches, so 40 minus 6 plus would give me that. Further to that, the inch value actually is assumed. So if you don't enter any unit of measurement, the program assumes you mean inches. So if I really needed 40 foot 6, 40 minus 6 would do the trick. I don't need to enter inches, it would be redundant. You can also use the quote and double quote character for the same, feet and inches. Once you have the value that you need there, the next task is to decide where that change of dimension is going to occur. The move on the dialog allows you to dictate that. So if I want this change to occur towards the left end of the wall, I hit the left arrow. If I want the change on the right, hit the right arrow. Or if I want to split the dimension or split the difference between, I hit the middle button. In this case, I want to go towards the right. I'm going to go in that direction. So the right end of the wall adjusted itself to make that 40 foot even. A more efficient way, though, of editing those dimensions is not to click on the dimension digit, but click on the dimension line itself. And more specifically, the side of the line that you want the dimension change to occur in. So for this dimension here on the side, it's currently 24, 9.5. If I want that to be 25 even, 25 feet, and I want that direction to go down, I'm not going to click on the dimension digit. Instead, I'm going to click on the dimension line towards the bottom of the line. Notice that the move already has a highlight within the down arrow button, so it already understands the direction I intend for that to occur in. So all I need to do is punch in 25 feet and then hit enter twice. And it's a much quicker way to put that dimension exactly where it needs to go with the appropriate direction change. I'll do that for the 6 foot. I'll click here, 6 feet, enter twice. This one, 20 feet, enter twice. So it's very quickly you can get these dimensions to go where they need to go by using that predictive editing of the dimensions. Next thing you'll probably notice is some of the extension lines are no longer appropriately connected or adjusted to their respective dimension lines. Again, SoftPlan draws with a series of objects, and these objects have what I call a built-in intelligence. They do smart things depending on their surroundings. At certain points of your design, you'll likely want to what we call clean up the drawing. There's a number of ways to do so. There's an icon here for cleanup. And in this case, a cleanup will trim or extend any extension line to meet the respective dimension line. A cleanup can also, for example, modify positions, or what we call offsets. Can also join cabinets together. And there are a number of other aspects of where the cleanup will then do things to clean up the drawing. I always say you can never clean up the drawing enough. Control C is also the keyboard shortcut for cleanup. I can press it here, you don't see nothing happen because I've already done it. But if you're curious, a control question mark does bring up this shortcut list. There's a number of shortcuts that are predetermined in the program. There's a nifty print button here. Print that out, tack it next to your screen, and get familiar with these common shortcuts. You'll find yourself being a much faster at drafting once you master these shortcuts. So Control C was the shortcut for cleanup. I'm going to go back to draw a wall. I'm going to fill in some interior partitions. I'm going to start by drawing a garage partition. This area in the lower left is going to be a garage. And you notice I left the dialog for the wall open because I want to go back and pick up a normal partition. From that wall list, you'll also notice there are indeed garage or exterior garage types. And yes, I should have used those. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to edit the existing walls around my now garage space and change them into a garage wall type. So to use the edit command, I'm going to use it this time from the toolbar. So there's a number of ways you can grab commands. I'm going to use the edit command as a ways to dictate how many different ways you can grab edit. First and foremost was from the edit menu, edit items. Second method, locating it in the toolbar. A third method is to use the right click to bring up the floating toolbar. There's also the edit within there. And a final method of grabbing a command is to poise your cursor over top of the object, in this case this wall, and hit the right mouse button once. Here we'll get a menu of the actions you can apply to the object that was underneath the cursor, in this case edit. So there's a number of ways to gain the edit command. Keep in mind now that I have edit command selected, it's in my status bar. It is now my active command. All I need to do is single left click on the next object to edit it. In this case, I want to change my 2x6 siding wall into a garage wall type. I'm going to spruce this up a bit. I'm going to choose a 2x4 brick siding garage. So it'll be half brick, half siding. When we change one wall into another, we are asked how those two walls are going to be aligned when you change from one to the other. In this case, I want to keep my bearing of the original wall, the stud region, in alignment with the brick or the outside of the new wall. That just keeps my dimensions as they were. So I'll set outside of current wall's outermost bearing material, in this case it's the stud of the sided wall, to align to the outside of new wall, which is the brick of my new wall. Hit OK. I'll edit the front of my garage and do the same. Notice when you have walls existing in the program, you will get those walls at the top of your list, both when you draw it and when you're editing it. Easy way to find the next 2x4 siding garage wall. I'll keep the same alignment. I'll edit the front house wall. I want the same half brick, half sided wall there, though I'm going to use the 2x6 brick sided wall. That's the house wall. I'll keep the same alignment, hit OK. The wall on the left side of the house, half of that wall is going to be the garage wall type. The other half is the house wall type. Right now it's a single wall as I originally drew it, but I need to break that wall into two lengths. To do so, a quick way is to go to the Tools menu and click on Insert Break. Now I can simply left click where I want that break to occur, and I've now broken that wall length into two individual wall lengths. I'll edit the bottom half, and you can tell by the highlight that it's only half the wall I'm modifying, and I'll switch it to the 2x4 sided garage wall. In this case, I want to keep the alignment of the bearing region, so outside of current wall's outermost bearing to the new wall's outermost bearing. Hit OK. Since I've changed the alignment for the brick and original house wall, this location, when I drew the garage partition, there's now a little bit of a jog. I want now to adjust or move that garage partition to align to the house wall. Quick tool to do that, and I've added it to the toolbar, Align to Edge. Once I have that command selected, it's 2 clicks. The first click is the edge that you want as the source edge. I'll click on the inside edge of the garage wall, and a dotted red line is shown extending from that edge. Any other object or object's edge that I now click will align to that dotted red line. So I'm going to click on the left side of the garage partition, and that's how they align. I now want to align the right side of the garage partition to the right side of the bathroom partition up here. So I'm going to right click. This cancels the alignment edge that I've currently selected, allow me to choose a different edge. And this time I want to choose the left edge of the garage partition, and then I'll click the right edge of the house partition. For the remaining partitions in the house, I'm going to come up to the dimension tool. So from the dimension menu, I'm going to use the toolbar shortcut to grab dimensions. And to manually add dimensions through the house, ideally we go to the outside of the house, click with the left mouse button, and drag my cursor all the way through to the opposite side of the house, and click again. We get dimensions that pass through the walls, and they will obviously strike here on each edge of the wall. Another way to add dimensions is if I poise my cursor within a room, I'll zoom up here, you'll see 2 dimensions that are appearing in the room. The more bolder dimension is the one that will be defaulted if I simply double click without moving the cursor. If I prefer to have the fainter dimension, I would click once, move my cursor in that direction, and click again. Here, I'm just going to simply double click. That brings up that dimension. And if I did want both, I'll just move my cursor up a little bit and double click again. I'll double click in this room, adds a dimension for its width. For the middle room, which will eventually be a bathroom and the hallway, I'm just going to come to the outside of the structure and pass through so I can quickly get both of them at the same time. Once I got my rooms sized, or at least dimensioned, I can now go back and size them. And again, just using the edit command. And I'll remember the predictive dimension edit, 8 feet towards the left, 6 feet down. My hallway will be 3 feet 4 down. So again, I was clicking on the side of the dimension line that I intend the dimension edit to occur in. Back in 3D, you can see how the design is starting to take shape here. We'll see the partitions in addition to the exterior walls. If I want to walk around or maneuver around my 3D, we kind of describe that how we can do it from a 2D. From a 3D point of view, we can do similar things. If I hold down the wheel button, this is an orbit. So if I hold down the wheel button on my mouse and move my mouse, I'm going to spin the house around. If I want to walk forward or walk backward, that's rolling towards you or away from you. And finally, if I hold down the right mouse button, that's a pan. So I can shift up, shift down, shift left, shift right. So using those commands, you can quickly get around your building. If you ever find your building lost and you're not sure where it went, such as this case, you can rely on what we call here the 3D view. This perimeter triangle, if we click on, for example, the bottom triangle, zooms up to the front of the house at about 45-degree angle. And then we could start orbiting and walking and doing what we want to. So it kind of recenters your model back into your visible screen area. Of course, the back triangle will give you the back, left, and right. And I'll go back to the front. Back in my floor plan, next thing I'm going to add are a series of openings. Draw, opening. I'm going to start with some generic windows. I'll go to casement. I'm going to add a 48 by 48 casement 2. On either side of that, I'm going to add a 24 by 48 double hung. Because I drew those windows tied up next to each other, those windows are actually working together. They are now what we call a site-built unit, and they're going to share common properties. They're going to share common interior and exterior trim. They'll share the same header. They'll share the same sill, but they're still individual windows that we can edit for individual properties. Grill on one, no grill on the other, for example. I'm going to keep this draw openings dialog open because I can always go back to it and grab a different window. But if I needed to change my location of where I am placing the windows in my floor plan, I'm just going to, in this case, pan so I can get to a visible space on my wall. I'm going to add the same two windows to that bedroom. I'm going to switch my library to the slider window. I'll add a sliding window to this bathroom. I'm going to add a series of transoms to the, I'll zoom out here, a series of transoms to the right side. I'll add 4 of them. Exterior door, I'll add a patio door, the non-grilled for this case, and add it towards the back. I'll come to a garage. I'll add the 16-foot wide or 192 by 84 floor panel. Place it towards the front, and then I'll come to exterior door, colonial, 36 by 80 would be my choice for the front door. I'm going to zoom up because there's going to be 2 ways this door is going to apply itself to the wall. It'll either be an out-swinging door, as we see here, or an in-swinging door. To make it change to an in-swing, and we simply move my cursor closer to the inside edge of the wall. And you'll notice too that I'm simply indicating the midpoint of all these openings. Finally, I'll come to a colonial interior door, 30 by 80. This is the last door I'm going to draw, so I'm going to hit OK so I can see the full drawing. I'll zoom up to this area. So like the front door, there's going to be either an in-swinging or an out-swinging, but above that as well, we can have it either as a left hinge or a right hinge door. So for example, if I move my cursor towards this wall at the bottom, or closer to the bottom corner, if you will, and closer to the right edge of the partition, it's going to be a door swinging into the hallway. Move my cursor to the opposite side, swings into the room. However, if I move my cursor up closer to the upper corner between the bathroom and the hallway, I get a hinged, or the door is hinged now on the opposite side. And again, whatever side of the wall I'm close to is where the door is going to swing. I want the door to swing into the room with the hinge being down. Once that is set, I simply click and the door is put in place. You'll see that hold true for the bathroom door. I want to swing in and I want the swing to go towards the right. So I put my cursor close to the right corner and the door will then be put in place. Back in 3D, we now have our structure with all the openings put in place. Next task then is to position those openings. Now that they're all in place, I want to get them in the right location. I'll first start by modifying the dimensions. Again, like anything else, click on the side of the dimension we want to modify, enter twice. This moves the sliding door over. I'll click on the left edge of this dimension, 4 feet. Notice here with these, what we call the site-built unit, because they're all working together, they all moved together. And this door of 3 feet again, I want to move towards the right. For the windows in the bedroom, I want them to be spaced equally from the inside corners. That's an information that's not yet displayed on the floor plan. So I'm going to come up here to my menu and click on something called single extension. This allows me to manually add a single extension to the object I pick on. In this case, I'm going to click on the window, move my cursor down, click again. That draws the extension in place. I'll do the same for that window, go down. I'll then come back up to my dimension command and draw a dimension through that room. Now I got those dimensions in place, back to my edit, 2 feet, again using the predictive editing to control the direction of that move. For the window in the bathroom, quick trick here, if I want that window to be centered, I can right-click on it, which I just did, and from the pop-up of commands you can apply to that object, in this case, the window, we can center it. When we center the opening, there are several ways to center it. We can center it by the inside edge. You can see a highlight line on the inside edge of the wall. We can center it along the outer edge, and that's going to center between the two outside corners, or we can center between the existing opening. So between the edge of this window and the edge of my sliding door. In this case, though, I want it centered not between the openings, but instead the inner length of the wall. And that was the default, and I've noticed that the program does a fairly decent job, usually 75 to 90% of the time. It knows where the center is going to go. Oops, right-click here and do the same. Center opening, and again, it does a fairly decent job of predicting what I want, but gives me the choice. The outer edge in this case was correct. The door to the bedroom, this will be a bedroom eventually, it is already centered. And the reason for that is if we take the width of the hallway and divide that width by half, as long as the size of the door is greater than that value, it will automatically be centered into the space of which it's put into. That's what happened to the garage door. It's automatically centered given the fact that the width of the garage door is greater than half the distance of the wall length. For the openings on the far right, I got 4 of them in there, and I want them all to be equally spaced along that wall. Quick trick to do that, if I right-click on the wall, so any wall that has multiple openings, from the right-click you'll have this option, equally spaced openings with the same choice, inner or outer. I want them to be equally spaced on the inner side, and it will adjust the position of all those windows to make that true. Back in my 3D, the only thing I want to do here for my front window is I don't want that middle mullion through the casement. So I'm going to edit that window, and I'm going to do this from a 3D point of view. So we have been so far modifying items from a 2D, but we can simply or as easily edit the objects here in a 3D point of view as well. So I went to the edit item, clicked on the window, and if I want to remove that middle section, first of all, turn off the product code. This allows me to, from the display column, set the number of horizontal sections to 1, and that will remove the middle mullion from that double casement. Now it's a single casement. I'm going to switch back to the main floor plan. What we're going to be drawing here will be a bungalow house, and it will have a full basement. So from my draw menu, I'm going to click on stair and click on a straight run stair, make it 42 inches. I want the stairs to be there. Now the position from the stair from the edge of the front wall wasn't indicated, but if I want to put some accuracy in there, I could add dimensions, but I'm going to choose to use this command called set distance between. It allows me to dictate between this edge and the stair edge that that's going to be 3 foot 4 inches and direction up. It allows me to position an object without adding any dimensions. Now that I have the stairs in there, I'm going to switch my drawing to what we call floor system mode. So here we're going to use our mode selector to dictate, in this case, what the floor system layout is going to be like. When we switch to any mode, first and foremost, you'll notice that the draw menu changes to give you draw tools that are relative to the mode you're currently in. In this case, we have floor system objects. I'm going to choose floor system. I'll choose all components, and I'll do an auto trace. Auto trace, if I click into the middle of the house, works on the ability to notice the perimeter of bearing walls and assumes that to be the perimeter of the floor system. And that's important to note because the garage partition I drew is defined as a bearing wall type, which is why the floor system separated the house and the garage. It knew from the fact that the garage partition was bearing that it wasn't part of the main floor system. Since I have a stair there, I'm going to go to a rectangular hole, and I'm going to trace a hole around the stairs. I'm going to go to a cursor snap as well. There's an icon here, also evoked by F11 on the keyboard. The snap allows me to add a little precision. So with my snap on, I'm starting to see red construction points. If I wanted the corner, that's the box. And if I clicked the opposite corner, I get an accurately drawn framed opening equally sized to the stairs because I used the snap. So that's the floor system. If I switch my drawing back to default drawing mode, the floor plan doesn't look like it has changed any differently. But if I go to my 3D point of view, we can now start seeing the floor system underneath. We got the subfloor in place. There's my stair in the hole. Again, yes, stairs by default do go up. Once we come to a section point of view, we will then take care of the stairs that go up. Now that I have the floor system on the main house, notice that the garage walls are a little bit shorter than the house walls. Quick way to get that modified and changed from the edit menu, set wall tops. It's a quick way to automatically have the program adjust the height of a wall. To use the command, click on a wall height. Walls. They will increase their height to match the height of the source wall or the first wall I clicked on. Since this is going to be a full basement, next task here is to create that basement. Back in the main floor plan, other floor plans of your house design are indeed separate drawing files. So if we were to do a second floor plan, ideally it's going to be made out of a copy of your main floor. The basement holds true in the same regard. We would make a copy of the main floor and then modify the copy to suit the layout of the basement. Under the model menu, we have an auto basement command that simplifies that step. So I'm going to select it. And what we notice here is a very important step. There's no reference point found. That is an important aspect of the design. We do need to establish a reference point. So I'm going to say, yes, I want to add that. To add the reference point, from the draw menu, go to reference. There are 4 of them here, but it's the first one, reference circle. That's the important one. Once I select it, I click on a corner of the building and it adds that reference point. And that reference point, again, needs to be on a common corner that's consistent from the basement up through the top floor. The program is going to use that reference circle when it assembles the various floor plans together to generate a full 3D elevation and section. Now that I got my reference point set, back to model, I'm going to come again to auto basement. There's some options here I can modify. I'm going to accept those defaults as being correct. I'll hit OK. There'll be a couple of options here about saving my drawings. I'll do so, and it quickly creates my foundation plan for me. It changes my walls into the foundation wall type. Any windows now are set to a sliding window, and important to note here that the garage door has turned itself into what we call a cross opening. It accounts for a cutout of the garage. Back in 3D, we can start to see a little bit of my foundation. Although in my garage, it still looks like grass. A couple of fine tunes that we're going to have to do here. I'm going to come back to my basement and I'm going to review the floor system of my basement. To draw the slab for the main house, draw slab, auto trace, and click in the middle, and that automatically traces the perimeter of the slab again based off of the bearing walls. I'm then going to review the position of the garage slab. So if I edit the middle of the garage slab, we have a tool in there called offset. That's the vertical placement up and down of any object. So when I drive my car into my garage, I don't want to fall down. I want to then raise my garage slab up 7 feet such that the top of the slab is flush to the top of, or I guess the bottom of the garage door. I'll hit OK. Back in 3D, again, because the position of what we call the auto horizon is in our way, I still don't see the garage slab. I'm going to come up here to Options and Setup Options and specify that the auto horizon is now 7 feet up as opposed to the default 7'8". I can now see where the slab of the garage is. And I can see obviously a little bit more of my foundation wall. I'm going to add a little bit of detail to the front elevation next. I'm going to stick in 3D. I'm going to click on Edit and click on the front window. And I'm going to start adding some exterior trim to all my windows. Once I have trim on one, if I want that same trim on all my other openings, I'm going to use something called Repeat Edit. It's a quick way to make one edit repeat itself across multiple items. So I'm going to click on Repeat Edit from my toolbar, and then click on each of my other openings. I can kind of orbit around to put into perspective the back windows. And I'll come back to the front. The 3D camera control, a really neat feature within that is this binoculars. If I select that and click on, in this case, the garage door, the program then zooms up to that surface that I clicked on. And what I want to look at here is how the garage trim interacts with the surface of the wall. Notice that the brick is kind of cut back and the trim is prow of the brick. I prefer to have the brick all the way to the edge and therefore the trim only encompass where the siding is. We can do that by, again, editing the opening, the garage door in this case, come to the exterior trim tab and turn on custom trim. From here, there's an option called stop at transition. It does just that. The trim now stops where the brick is. I'll edit the front door and do the same, set it to custom, stopping at transition, and the door trim does the same. For the window trim, I don't want to stop at the transition. Instead, I want to lower the brick sill, if you will, to account for the trim. However, because that is in a brick wall, there is a brick cast sill there. I don't need the sill, so I'm going to edit the window. First of all, come to the Plan tab, or sorry, Display tab, and remove the sill. Then back to the exterior trim, turn on Custom so it can apply now a bottom piece of trim to that window. Now I'm going to edit the wall, and when we have a wall that is of two different surface materials, siding to brick as we have here, we can dictate where that material transitions to the other by going to the Transition tab. Here I want this to be 2 feet 6. That just positions the brick soldier course just underneath the trim of the window. Modifying it for that wall, though, I want it to align with the trim or the brick on the garage wall. So I'll edit that wall. However, the trim, or sorry, the transition needs to be at a different position. This is because the garage wall has no floor system. So we have to account by adding the depth of the floor system to the transition height. So the original was 2'6" on the house wall. So this case is going to be 3 foot 5.625 inches. I'll then do a repeat edit to get the front of the garage. Now that I've gotten or lowered my brick sill, notice that the trim on the doors, garage door and the front door, don't quite go down to it. This again, where another case of the cleanup will correct that. And I can do a cleanup here in 3D, so a Control C. That will then extend the exterior trim, stopping at the new location of the transition. If I come to the side of the house, again, when I broke that wall earlier, that wall being a sided wall maintains the corner board. I don't need a corner board where the two walls butt up to each other, so I'm going to quickly edit each wall, and from the end trims, this case the orientation is relative to its plan perspective, so up in this case set it to none, and then I'll edit the top half, down style will be none. That removes the trim work between. Towards the front, I'm going to quickly set up some textures here. So if I do what we call a surface edit, I'm going to edit the front of my house. I'm going to change the texture. I'm going to go to a manufacturer's, a SoftPlan Plus, Allura fiberboard cement, lap siding cedar lap. Let's pick this coastal blue. This adds a blue texture to that surface. I want to apply that same tone of blue to my trim, the window trim. Quick way to do that is to use the copy paste of the surface. To use it, we click on the surface that has the appropriate texture selected anywhere on the walls, and then I'll click on, for example, the garage door trim. I'll then zoom up to it using the binoculars. And so it did just that. It set the same trim to the garage door. However, I don't want the siding texture. So I'm going to do a surface edit on the garage door. And although the color has matched, it's not using the color. I'll simply click on display color. And now my trim or tone of trim matches the tone of the siding on the house. I want to do the same thing for all the openings. A quick way to change all trim at once. From the options menu at the top, I'm going to come to material. And from the top half, I'm going to click on openings. You can see if I drill down, I can go right to the garage door. The garage door already has its trim set to blue, but everybody else does not. If I want everybody to follow the same trim, I'm going to come up to the openings category in the top half, locate the exterior wood trim, click on it, and change it to the same material. Make sure display color is selected, hit OK, and that will apply that color tone to all my opening trims. Finally, I want the corner boards to have the same, so I'll use copy surface paste, click on a trim of a window, and paste that to the corner board. One more trick here, I'll go to another surface edit, click on the brick. I'll choose this grayish tone brick. Notice it's only going to change the brick itself. The row lock or soldier course has not updated. I'll do a different edit on that because it does belong to a soldier course texture. And I'll just pick the equivalent gray brick that's there. We'll finish off the design by quickly adding a roof. We can do so in 3D from the draw menu, roof, auto roof, quickly puts a roof in place. We can modify the roof in one of two ways. We can, and again, I'm going to do this in a 3D point of view. So an item edit on my roof in the middle allows me to change, for example, a pitch value. This changes the pitch of the whole roof. If I wanted to change the style of roof, for example, I wanted a garage to have a gable above it, I'll click on the edge of the roof, and I can do that by changing it to a gable. Notice I got a roof edge control here to allow me to change the properties belonging to just that edge. Quickly, I'm going to generate some elevations. Now I got the house design for the most part set. Generating elevations allow me to see all that work. So here's the final elevation, although a couple of details I can modify. I don't need these windows from the front, so I can use my erase command to get rid of them. I'll come to a left. Notice the windows are not there because it's the left. Come to the right. If I want to get rid of these windows, let's maybe get rid of the two middle. I'll keep the ones on the end. And finally, do the rear. Kind of do the same thing. Dictate what windows you want to keep and those that you do not. And if you decide that you want to change the size of the window, I can edit this here in a elevation view and change its size as necessary. Back in the basement plan, if I switch myself back to the drawing mode, updates the floor plan to remove those openings. If I wanted to add the dimensions back, there is indeed an auto dimension tool here. which would quickly add the dimensions back to the exterior of the building. If I wanted the interior dimensions to also be included, as we did with the main floor, I could strike them that way. In my basement, next thing I want to apply here, if I come to my model view of my elevation, I want to see the same textures that I've applied within 3D. So I change my mode of my 3D. By default, it's going to be shaded. I'm going to switch that to a textured view, which matches the 3D texture that I initially created. So it shows me the brick pattern and the siding pattern and the shingle pattern. The edge work is kind of lost. So if I want to sharpen up the edges, options, mode options, line options, I'm going to say display lines, and I'm going to use a single color for those lines, so they'll all be black, and I'm going to thicken them up to about, I'll say 4. The line work of the brickwork looks lost, and this is because the brick has what we call a relief depth set to it. It allows it to appear rough, if you will, from a 3D point of view, although from this elevation view, it kind of hides the brick. So to turn that off globally under face options, I can turn off the relief depth for all items, clears up those surfaces that are defined as rough so we can see them here. Finally, now that I have the look of my elevation as I like, I want to add some details to it, some notes, for example. By default, the elevation comes up what we call a model view. I'm going to switch it to an annotated view. This allows elevations to dictate with dimensions, notes, and if I want to add further details, and let me zoom up to it a little bit here, I'm going to come up to notes, speed notes, asphalt shingles, and I can add any other notes as I needed to. I'll just add the one. If that note is kind of lost within the pattern beyond, I can edit it and override the note properties just to give it an outline and mask that outline so I can see the note more clearly. So that finishes up the design of my front elevation. This becomes now my construction document. I'm going to come back to my floor plan. Next task here perhaps is to create a section view. To create the section, we first from the model menu go to section line. So we dictate where we're going to cut the building and the view direction. I'll cut the building this way, and I want to look towards the right, so I'll hit the right mouse button. So 3 clicks, start, end, and the view direction. That section view, again, for my navigation is shown, so I can double click on A, and it will then generate my section view as well. From the section view, we start noticing that the stairs that we've created are not really required. So I'm going to edit the stair. From the Common tab, there's the option to remove it from the model and hit OK. The stairs in the basement, they need to be lowered a bit or have their total rise lower. They're a little bit too tall, so I'm going to edit those and just modify that. This works out to be 8 feet, 7.625, again, based off of the dimensions of the basement wall and the dimensions of the floor system depth and the floor system of the main floor. Back in my plan view, I'm going to add some really quick details here. Draw cabinet. I'm going to come to something known as auto cabinet. I'm going to draw both the upper and the lowers at the same time, and I'm going to switch them to a painted view. And to draw an auto cabinet, we simply click along the back edge of where we want those cabinets to exist. Once we're done, a final right mouse click will then add the cabinet. So this is a quick way to indicate that this area is the kitchen without putting too much thought into the size and placement of each individual cabinet. However, from this point of view still, I can, for example, edit the individual cabinets. If I click on this one, I can replace that cabinet with an actual symbol. In this case, I'm going to come to Manufacturer, KitchenAid, Ranges, and I'll pick, the first range here, and it replaces that cabinet with that range. the cabinet beside it now displays its name because it is all by its lonesome, but I can turn off its name by clicking it and removing the show name. If I want to add a sink, same idea, although it's not going to remove the cabinet, it's simply going to add the sink in its place. A tap would be added in the same fashion. So we go to tap, I'll maybe add the first one there just to quickly put it in place. And if I want to get interior shots of those, I'm going to come to Model, Interior Elevation. I'm going to stand here and look towards that set of cabinets. Left click, left click. I now have two interior elevation markers. Those become accessible here in my navigation as well. So a double click pops it into place, and we get to see what the interior elevations look like. There's one, and there's number two. If I want to give more detail to it, a quick way to do that back in the main floor plan, I can designate these as rooms. One special mode of the program is that of room mode. So I come here to room mode, draw room. I'll quickly locate a series of rooms. This will be the garage. We have a bedroom here. Oh, bath, bedroom one. And I'm going to quickly search for a family room. Add that as a family room. So that adds the labels. And if I switch my drawing back to drawing mode, we see those labels, but we start to see some other details, the electrical outlets, for example, and light fixtures. So the program is automatically adding these details based on the properties of the room. If I come back to my interior elevations, these now start to populate with that detail. We also get a wall covering. So we have a green paint, if you will. There's crown mold, there's baseboard. If I come back to my 3D point of view, looking through the front window, we can see some of those details from a 3D perspective as well. And a really neat thing about adding rooms is if I come to the camera menu and click on Go to Room, I can quickly change my camera's perspective to any room I decide. So there's my kitchen, for example. If I want to maybe get a better perspective of it, I can certainly move around if I needed to. Now, I'm basically just scratching the surface here of what we can do with kitchen and even bath designs. We've done a number of kitchen and bath Friday fundamentals, so I would encourage you to review those to get a lot more detail out of how we can fine-tune both the kitchen and the bath. But what I want to end off today is creating quickly a plan set. So now that I have all my drawings created, elevation sections, in this case a basement and main floor, and a couple of interior elevations, I want to assemble all those on a set of construction documents. We do so by creating what we call a plan set. From my navigation, locate plan set, and if you right click on that, go to add plan set, we'll give it a name. Choose the size of paper we want. I'll choose an ANSI C here. We'll add a border. And we'll create the first page called main floor, hit OK. This then creates a piece of paper that allows, with the border obviously, that allows me now to, from the navigation, drag and drop the main floor into the middle. Notice also that the information that I filled out earlier when we first started this project is repeated here. So that information, if you fill it out under, again, project options, will populate in your title block automatically. If you wanted to create another page within your construction documents, right-click on the plan set's name, add page. I'll maybe do some elevations, because with an elevation view, this holds true for the section and interior elevation, I drag and drop its view and will be prompted with either showing just the plain model perspective or the annotated view. I'm going to choose annotated here because I want to include that note I added in the dimension and elevation marker lines. I'll add the left to the bottom, also with an annotated views, and that's how quickly we can populate this plan set page. I'm going to add one more. I'm going to base it off of a template. We do have the ability to save templates. So once you have a plan set already established, you can save that as a template, which makes the job of creating a plan set very efficient. So here I've created the plan set based off of a template, which automatically adds all other drawings and section views automatically within it. And there's my interior elevations. So I know I covered off a lot of info in a relatively short amount of time. I'm just now at an hour. Again, whether if you're new to the program or have been using it for a few years, I do hope you've learned and picked up a few useful tips and tricks, just so you become more efficient in using the program. As mentioned, this seminar will be posted on our social media pages, so sometime over the next few weeks you can go and review all the content here. I know I pushed through it relatively quickly. The program is packed with stuff, and so I try to, in as short amount of time as possible, put a lot of information into it. And so I hope you at least gained something from that, and I thank you very much for joining me today. You have a great weekend. Thanks, everyone.